Hi, I'm Ava Colopy. I am the host of the book show on Diversity TV, and I am so happy to be invited to Everywoman TV with Carol Azams on Sky. I am a teacher and a writer of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, and I expect to have some of my work as a teacher up on Teachers Pay Teachers later this year. My Facebook and website are Ava Colopy Books. And today I want to talk about this book, 2020, Year of COVID-19, Stories of Lockdown, Volume 1, with 101 different voices. Now, Carol decided to be super generous and offer us the opportunity to have our own version of the book with our own cover and our own description and our own promotional opportunities, which I was so happy about. And when I went to trying to describe what this book is actually like, so we could have our description on the back here, I actually thought about it and thought it's a very interesting and very modern way that she went about recording this unprecedented historical event. Because normally the way you record history throughout time, as you're probably aware, is you might have one or two people who are considered experts, they're the history writers, and they tell you what happened. But here we have all these different voices, and all these author photos are here on the cover and the back cover, and they are all these different perspectives from around the world telling you the unique different perspectives on what happened. So the event is common, but the voices are all different, and they're very personal narratives instead of being a general distant historical accounting of the facts. Now, I enjoy reading some different historical accounts, and I've taught history, but I find this to be a very interesting way to go about the classical idea of writing about a historical event. It's a very unique way of going about it. So for my particular piece in the book is called Mother Figure, and it is about my experience during the pandemic, which is being an essential worker working in retail management, a store that sold, among other things, foods and medicines. But while that was going on, I was also helping my extended family here in Arkansas. Now, I'm from Oregon originally, and then I lived in Ireland. I had never lived in the South before, and I highly recommend anyone from one region of the country, North or South, going and living in the other one so you can learn to see and appreciate some of the good things about it, because anyone who's familiar with U.S. history knows we had that Civil War, and there is some bitterness and some deep wounds that are still there, and it would really be great for this country if we had more of that transference over so that we can heal some of those old wounds, learn to appreciate the good things about that other part of the country. For me here, my experience has been that these people are very nice, very helpful people. It has been a good experience to have. So while I was helping my extended family, I ended up being very close with this girl who had been abandoned by her parents, who were drug addicts, and I ended up being a mother figure to her, partly because even though my mother didn't leave us, she had some mental health problems that made her very difficult to deal with. So we were never close, though I respect and appreciate some good things that she did for me over the years. I really wanted to help this girl in that situation. And eventually what happened was I actually spent all my money to hire a lawyer to get legal guardianship of her. But we were looking at me ultimately adopting her. But instead what happened was, as soon as I got that guardianship, it was in the legal network. And some states share information between each other, others do not for various reasons. He was in a state where legal information got exchanged pretty readily, and very soon after that he contacted me on social media and was saying, well, who are you? Why do you have my daughter? I thought she was with family. And a part of why it turned out he left, besides the drug problem, was he had been in and out of the foster system, so he didn't think he was basically worth anything as a parent, and he thought he should just give up and leave because he wasn't helping his kids. But that actually hurt them more. So at first I was against him having contact with her because I thought he might still be on drugs. As soon as we established he was off the drugs and he was trying to put his life back together, I said, well, come on down, come back to the family. And we got him back to the family. And it's kind of a long story, but in the end, they reconciled and they're continuing to reconcile, and we all agreed that I would give up the guardianship. So we're still in legal process of getting that done, but that is what she asked me to do and what they wanted me to do so that they could fully reconcile. So that was very painful for me to give her up at that point, but I really truly believed it was the best thing to do in the situation, so I went ahead and did that. So I am once again a happily childless person, which again, I only point out because it is very important that we have these conversations and say it is your decision that you have to make. You need to be sure you want to have a kid or you don't want to have a kid, and that choice is yours, and there's nothing wrong with you deciding that you want to be a parent or that you don't want to be a parent. You have to make the decision that is right for yourself. So while I have the chance, I want to talk about some of my other work as a writer. Of course, since January 2020, I've been the host of the book show on Diversity TV. Off the top of my head, I forget the exact air date, but I know I started working on those scripts in January 2020, and it was Carol Azams' idea, and she said, hey, this sounds like something that you would be interested in. I was like, I don't know if I can do that. But I started writing those scripts and filming it, and I've actually had a blast making these podcasts. And it has given me the opportunity to do a lot of what I do as a teacher, which is to help people to think critically and form their own opinions. And that is what a teacher should do. Teach you how to think, not what to think. So before that, I had written and published some different books, one of poetry and some of fiction and nonfiction. One of my fiction books is this one, Live Boldly, Fear Nothing, and is about a character who is a vigilante and a painter. As a character that I first had come into my mind, my imagination, when I was 12, and this basically tells his backstory. To me, it's his backstory, but it happens in the present when we're going through it. So he is a fantasy scenery painter, and he lives in Portland, Oregon. I'm from Oregon. I love Portland, although I love traveling around. So he has an experience of extreme trauma from violence in his life, and it is his mother has been raped and murdered. So he tracks down the guy who did it and he kills him. But instead of then being able to go back to his normal life, he starts killing other sex offenders, and it is sort of, oh, I'm making the world a better, safer place, but it is really because of the psychological and emotional problems that he does this. And I tell his story and what he's going through as a young man, 19, 20, and so on, and his experiences of what he's going through and how he's becoming a more violent person, and the violence is becoming more normalized in his life. So it is not a story that promotes gun use or gun violence. It is really about how violence begets violence in our society. And originally I called the story The Scenery of North America because he's a fantasy scenery painter and because our society is so violent. So now I'm going to go into what may seem like a sidebar, but it's not really a sidebar, because all of my writing is very much based in societal issues and debates about those issues and thinking critically about it and having my characters go through that experience. So I consider this topic very relevant today, given the current debates here in the US about gun violence. Now, some people, they may mean well, but they foolishly think that if you ban all the guns, then the gun violence problem is going to go away. Well, besides that, criminals would still have guns, and many guns could easily be sold on the black market. It is virtually impossible to completely police the borders of a country, and a country this size, no matter how valiant the efforts of our law enforcement agencies. There is just thousands and thousands of miles of border. So guns are already illegally trafficked in and sold on the black market. And they would continue to be so. There would be more of that trafficking. And guns don't kill people. They don't make people want to kill people. They are more efficient than other methods of committing murder. There is no denying that. They are more efficient. But they are not the cause of the problem. The lack of mental health care in this country, the lack of families coming together and supporting each other, the lack of there being a community, a sense of community in our country, a consideration for others, the selfishness and self-centeredness in our society, and how many adults don't want to be adults and take responsibility. They want respect, but they don't want to earn it. The lack of attention and care to young people growing up, the incredible amount of violence in the news and popular entertainment, normalizing seeing extreme violence. These are some of the causes of the violence problem in this country, with or without guns being involved. If all the guns were suddenly magically gone overnight, this problem would not be solved, unfortunately. People with severe mental health issues would still go on killing sprees using other weapons, admittedly less efficient weapons, but we would still have this problem. Gun violence is a symptom of a much bigger issue in our modern society, an issue of selfishness, of cruelty, of lack of mercy for others, of not properly raising and caring for our kids and families and supporting and helping families through hard times, with rules, boundaries, structure, respect, but also compassion for these young people and families. Our government spends more money on youth incarceration than it does on education. You can go research that yourself and look at the numbers. It is appalling. Our prisons are for-profit entities trading on the stock market, and we all know in this country that usually if someone goes into the criminal system, they come out more violent, more traumatized, and then connected with other criminals. This is not a system focused on reform and rehabilitation. We are not helping people. We are causing more harm. We are have a very punishing mentality, and though I'm all for people taking responsibility for what they've done, the goal should be to rehabilitate so we can all live together in the same society, and we are lacking that. I have been working as a high school teacher. After being an essential worker, I got back into teaching here in the US, and from what I've seen, it is absolutely tragic and heartbreaking how many parents there are that really do not care about their children. And myself and colleagues have at times tried to call up parents, get a hold of them, say, hey, your kid's struggling in my class, there's been this behavior issue, and you often cannot get a hold of these parents. They just do not care. And it is just a shock. And it is also maddening how little these kids are taught manners. They're largely thrown at us, and they haven't been taught any manners. And manners are like a social lubricant. They make it so we can all work together. Picture a car engine with no oil in it. That is a society with no manners. So these kids haven't been taught rules, structure, boundaries, yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, just polite things that you might take for granted. They're not being taught these things. So it's very frustrating when you have them in the classroom, but you can't blame them because they're kids. They haven't been taught these things, and they need to be taught these things so we can all function together in a society. I know some parents are just busy working their 2 or 3 jobs to barely get by, so there are times when that is the issue and the parents do care. They are just that busy, and I respect that. But there are also a lot of parents that really just don't care and just throw their kids at the school system and act like it's our job to figure everything out for them. Well, we're there to enforce manners and rules that have already been taught, not actually to teach them all rules and manners. That is actually not what teachers are for. So I also know that there are a lot of teachers and school employees that they themselves really don't care. Some of us care a lot, others do not. So put yourself in the position of a young person growing up in the United States today with this system the way it is, experiencing that, and imagine how hurt you would be, how emotionally distant, how emotionally traumatized you can be from this environment. And this is not new. This has been going on for quite some time now. But it's not getting solved because people are arguing and fighting and being more and more partisan instead of coming together and saying, hey, we all live in the same country, we're all a part of the same community, we all need to work on this together. It's not getting any better. There is sadly no quick and easy fix for our society's problem with violence and gun-related issues and not. We would all have to pull together as a community and work together to create community, rules, structure, boundaries for all of us together, and in the spirit of doing what is best for your community as a whole, like some of the Northern European countries are known for, coming together and doing what is best for the whole group, for the whole country. Though I must say I am all for, with guns, mental health checks, background checks, and a person having to take a firing test to show that they actually know how to safely and responsibly handle a firearm. much like you are not allowed to buy a car unless you have a driver's license because you passed a test. You passed your written test and your practical test to show that you actually know what you're doing. I'm all for that. As for ideas of outright banning guns, the problem there is that that is a constitutional right to keep and bear arms, Second Amendment. If you ban one right in the Constitution, you set a precedent to ban all of them, and then the Constitution wouldn't matter, and then we would not be the United States of America anymore. And you wouldn't solve the problem because you'd still have guns in the country, and it's the desire people have to use them to hurt other people or just to basically freak out because they have these psychological problems that are not being taken care of. However, you could put an amendment in the Constitution. There are currently 33 amendments to the US Constitution. You could have people vote on it and bring a new rule in. 10 of these amendments are the Bill of Rights. The first 10, they were penned by our founding fathers. Our founding fathers wanted these amendments in. Maybe not all of them, but at least most of them did. So it is in no way going to contradict US law or the spirit of the United States or the Constitution itself to bring in an amendment. And I think we are safe to say a conversation about adding a new amendment to address the technological changes that have happened in the past 234 years since the Constitution was ratified. I think we are safe to do that. It's a good idea at this point. So we all do active shooter drills in the public schools in the United States. That is something we are required to do. We've all done it, all the teachers, all the students. We do these active shooter drills of what we're supposed to do if someone comes into the school, student or not, and they shoot up the place. This is insane. And think about the effect it has on young people here. And think about the effect it would have on you if you were a young person growing up in this country, that active shooter drills are just a normal part of life now. This is insane. That banning the guns in and of itself would not solve the problem. There are other weapons, they're less efficient, but the real problem is at the core of our society, that we do not have this togetherness, we are not helping each other. So to be clear, with this book here, I am not promoting violence or gun violence. I am using this young man's story to talk about the violence in our society. He has found a dysfunctional way to process his trauma, and it is really, in a lot of ways, very damaging to him and to others. So that is what my story is about. It is not about promoting violence or promoting gun violence, just so that's clear. Now to switch gears, here is one of my non-fiction books. It is about the story of divorce in Ireland without a solicitor. In Ireland and 2 or 3 other countries, there's solicitors and barristers. They're both types of lawyers. Solicitors tend to do paperwork, and your barristers are going to represent you in a courtroom if you require that. So that's why it's a solicitor. So while I was living in Ireland, I was married to a very nice man, but we ended up not working out as a married couple. We worked very well as friends, but not as life partners. So eventually we had that difficult conversation where we say, well, we need to get a divorce. So we start on that process. And what I'm used to is, for example, if you're in Oregon and you have a very simple legal matter, you can go to your county courthouse and ask them, how do I do this? And normally they're going to have the forms right there, a blank form, and you fill in your personal information and you file it in the court and you start the process that day. And every time you need another step, they'll explain it. They'll explain to you the first time the steps you take and about how long each one takes. This is what I'm used to coming in here. Now I found that in Arkansas, it's not done like that, but coming from Oregon, this is what I expect. So I'm someone who rarely has a legal matter, so this ends up being all new to me. So we had no children, no pets, no property together, pretty much no property of which to speak, no pensions, nothing. We think, oh, this is going to be an easy divorce. We'll wait the originally 4 years that you have to be separated, and then the majority of us in Ireland voted to change the law to be 2 years. So we waited our 2 years. We can now file for a divorce. Okay. It was extremely easy for us to get married, and the fine employees at Joyce House down in Dublin city center, they were very nice and very helpful, and they told us all the forms we need, you know, your birth certificate with an apostille stamp and the other forms you need and everything. They explained everything to us. They were very helpful. But when I went to the family law courthouse there in Dublin to ask how do I start divorce proceedings, these staff were extremely rude, unhelpful, would not tell me anything. They were kind of mean, and they just added to my stress. And my then still husband had the same experience when he went down to talk to them. So at first I thought it was because they could tell I was a foreigner, an immigrant, because of my US accent, but he has the Irish accent and they treated him the same way. So all the employees that I dealt with down there, they were women, and they acted like I was a terrible person to be asking about a divorce and trying to get a divorce. And it reminded me of when a few years before then, right after I got married, I went down to a social services office to explain about how I don't go by Mrs., I go by Ms. So they started sending mail to me, Mrs., and I don't use Mrs. I do not pass judgment on how other women decide to do their names. I won't go and complain and get in your face about it. That is your business. But what I was raised with by my mother, who went through the 1970s, and in her lifetime, women, among other things, could not open a bank account or have a mortgage or anything without a man being involved. They were not allowed to do that. So she went through all of this, and for her it was a very big deal. And the principle that she taught her children, her daughters and her son, is that males are technically master and then Mr., and so women should be Miss and then Ms. like Mr. And that was a principle she raised me with, and a part of how I show my respect for her and honor her memory for the good things that she did for me. Despite our frankly very bad relationship over the years, there are some things I respect her for, and I honor her among other ways by teaching critical thinking, for one thing, but also by using Ms. This is a very big deal to me. So I very politely explained to the woman behind the counter, this is very important to me. This is a feminist principle about human rights and human equality. It's not really women's rights, it is human rights. When you talk about African American rights or women's rights, you are actually just talking about human rights. So I explained this to her, and I was very polite and very nice, but she acted like she hated me, like I was a terrible person, some sort of an absolute whore even, because I wanted to go by Ms. when I was married, and I should go by Mrs. And I found this very strange because it was none of her business. That's my name, that's my choice. This had nothing to do with her. And if it was fine between my husband and I failed to see why anyone should have any opinion about it. Really had no effect on anything she was doing. But she absolutely refused to change it and stormed off to the back room. And, she works for a public office, meaning our tax money pays for her, and that's the kind of service she's giving to the taxpayer. Very ridiculous, very inappropriate. And this is a huge problem throughout the world society. People, women and men, alike acting as if a woman is a piece of public property. And that's what she was doing to me. And that is exactly what you're doing when you treat a woman like that. You are saying, I think you're a piece of public property. It isn't for you to decide what to do with your name. I am not a piece of public property. It was my decision to get married, my decision to go by Ms., and it was my decision to get a divorce. And I do not tolerate being treated like a piece of public property, and I do not tolerate other people being treated as if they are public property. Individual human beings are not. So no matter how amicable a divorce is, it is still very hard, it is very painful, it is very draining, it is very stressful, no matter how nice you try to go about it. So since my husband and I didn't have kids, we didn't see any reason why anyone should be sticking their nose into our business and delaying us anyway. We'd already waited the requisite 2 years. So it's not like you can rush into a divorce in Ireland anyway, which is totally fine. I am all for people having the maturity to say, I've given my word on this. Let's try to make it work. Let's not just use the saying, throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. Let's try to make it work, and we had tried for years to make it work, and we work very well as friends, but we just do not work as life partners. So this was very hard for us, and we really wanted kind of that community support. Like when we were getting married or when I was applying for my dual citizenship, people were very helpful and nice, and the Irish government put on a whole ceremony for everyone who was getting their citizenship the day I was. They do these group ceremonies, and where I was in County Dublin, they have you go to the convention center in the heart of Dublin, and it's a big ceremony, and they play the national anthem. They have it played by the Irish Army, who are a very well-trained army that often do work for the United Nations in peacekeeping operations, helping refugees escape an area, or those kind of things. They put on a whole big ceremony for you. You all say your oath of loyalty together, and it's a great ceremony. And it is especially great if you're of Irish heritage like I am. Colby is an Irish name, goes back to County Limerick. So they were wonderful for all of that, and the Irish are usually very nice and very kind and very generous. And in the old Irish laws, you actually had to be very good to guests that came into Ireland. So it was very bizarre to me to be getting the opposite treatment for a change, and it just made everything much more stressful for my then still husband and I. We did not need that. We really wanted our community to kind of support us in something that was so emotionally difficult. So we found that a solicitor would charge maybe 2,000 to 3,000 euro at the cheapest, maybe, to do a really, really simple divorce where there was no property, no children, nothing to argue about, and neither of us was arguing about anything. We didn't want anything from the other person. What was mine was mine, what was his was his. We were all in agreement on everything. So we thought this was completely ridiculous, and so did anyone we happened to mention it to. And Dublin today is a very international city, so it didn't matter what country they were from. They all thought this was ridiculous, with no children involved. So we were both working as English language teachers at the time, and starting pay for that is about half what a public school teacher makes here in the US. And we all know teachers don't get paid much. So you can live on a public school teacher's pay if you have no children and no pets, and you're not trying to buy a house. Any of my colleagues who have any of those complications, they work 2 and 3 jobs to cover that. And oftentimes they will have a spouse or other partner who's also working a job, and that's what it takes to get by if they want to start a family or actually own a house or anything like that. So my ex-husband and I didn't really have 2,000 to 3,000 euro lying around so we could pay a solicitor. We didn't have money lying around collecting dust that we could just, spend willy-nilly. We needed our money. So we spent our own time figuring out step by step what to do and how to do it. And part of that was just my determination and my stubbornness and self-righteousness, saying this is ridiculous and they shouldn't be treating people like this. This is a very stressful time and it should not be made this difficult. There shouldn't be this added stress added into it. And there'd been that attitude of treating me like as a woman, I don't have a right to do this. And that never goes well for anyone arguing with me about that point. So in this book, I explain how we got our divorce step by step and form by form. And in this book and on my website, Ava Colopy Books, I have blanked out court forms. Every court form we use with the exact wording that you need, because you can't just file the document, it has to have the exact wording. For example, in Irish law, it is a very big deal about pensions. So even though neither of us had a pension, it had to be in the court documents worded in a very specific way that we did not have pensions. Absolutely important and had to be done that way, or the courts would not accept it and we would not be able to get a court date to appear before a judge to be asked permission to end our divorce, which again I have issue with because we're 2 consenting adults. So I really didn't think we should have to appear before a judge for that, since there was no children, no pets, no property. But there's all the court forms in here, and they're on my website as well, so that you don't have to retype everything. You could copy and paste. Now, Ireland does have this irritating tendency to change a lot of little details of the laws. So this was finished in 2020. It's 2022 now. They may have changed some little details along the way, but anytime I had a question and anytime you might have a question, there are what are called free legal clinics, and they're run generally out of citizens' information offices around County Dublin and elsewhere. So you can go there and you can see a solicitor and get some questions answered. So if they've changed some little details of the law, you can go there and you can get some help and have the solicitor explain to you what needs to be included or taken out and so forth. So this book is not, it is not about encouraging people to get a divorce. Like I said, my ex-husband and I tried for years to make it work, and we just do not work as life partners, even though we're very good friends to this day. So I don't encourage people to get a divorce, but if you're already there and you know that you're there, this is about helping you through this painful and stressful process so that it will not be as hard for you as it was for us and add to the stress that is already going on. And my ex-husband is a dear friend, and he's very supportive of me writing this book because he was just as frustrated and stressed out as I was by this whole process. So he was really glad when I was like, well, maybe I should turn it into a book. And he was almost half his idea, like, hey, you should put this information somewhere so it's not so hard for other people. So in fairness to him, I'm going to do a little promotional plug here. His name is Aaron Tyndall. That's how they pronounce it in Ireland. I'm not being weird for any viewers in the United States. That's how they pronounce it, Aaron. I'm not saying Aaron, but it is Aaron Tyndall. And he has an Etsy page and a Facebook, and it is Aaron Tyndall Designs. And he does things like designer leatherwares and knife sheaths. He carves knife handles for different types of knives, like the Opinel, the famous French knife. And he also does some different jewelry. And he's actually, like a lot of men, he's a little bit colorblind, actually. But it is a good thing with him because he has a different eye than you or I for the colors he puts together. And then he puts some really interesting colors together. Sometimes makes very symmetrical or very asymmetrical jewelry. And has been doing that for years. So it is handmade, authentic Irish crafts because he loves Irish culture and heritage, does not like the touristy nonsense. He doesn't do that. He does real handmade Irish crafts. So you go ahead and check that out. I have other books, but that is all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. Please tune in to The Book Show on Diversity TV and Diversity TV in general for all the other amazing shows that are on there, which showcases the modern multicultural international nature of Ireland and beyond, and it tends to have guests from all different countries, all different perspectives. So thank you for watching. Have a safe and blessed day. I hope you find what you're looking for.